Anushree Jain is a game designer who's currently working at Miniclip Games. And she has over 5 years of experience in game design, and she has over 7 years of experience in design. She's here to talk about how she got into game design and how she's at the place she is today. So, welcome, Anushree. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much. I'm good. How are you?
I am good too. So, Anushree, can you tell us how you actually got started with game design in the first place? Like, when was the moment in your life that you felt I needed to do game design for the rest of my life?
It actually took me a lot of time to understand that I wanted to game design because so after my schools, I knew that I wanted to go into design because I was more inclined towards this creative field. So I decided I'll apply for an IFT. And the good thing that happened with me was I did not know what I want to do, but I knew what I did not want to do. So I knew I did not want to go into fashion design or textile design. And I think by that time, I didn't even know that there's something as game design or toy design. So I just went into it, and then I started with product designing because I had the opportunity to experiment with a lot of materials and stuff. And when I was in an IFT, I found out that I'm more inclined towards toy design. I like the part where you do a lot of research, and then there's a lot of colorful elements involved, and then the whole thinking process, the whole design thinking process is very different for kids and toys. So then, after my bachelor's, I thought, why not pursue a degree in toy design?
Mhm.
So I had this institute, an ID in India, which actually gives you toy and game design. So which is a mix of physical toys as well as digital game design.
Right.
So then I went for my master's in toy and game design, thinking that I will be a toy designer and I'll study about it. But the good part about that course was they not only taught us about what toy design is, but they also taught us about what play design is, what digital game design is, and all different aspects of it. And I think that's where I realized after doing a lot of toy designing, I realized that this is not what I want to do. And I actually am interested into the whole digital aspect of game design. I already used to play a lot of games and video games and mobile games. So I had like an overview of it, and I was already interested into it.
Right.
And then, sorry, yes.
Yeah, right. Okay.
And then meanwhile, I also got this opportunity to go for an exchange program to Zurich, Switzerland
Uh-huh.
at ZSDK. And that was a place I think which changed it for me because that is where I actually learned everything about game design. And not only about game design, but everything around it as well. So they made sure that we learned programming, which is not a part of game design. We learned art. We learned how to make our own game, how to code our own game, and then publish it somewhere so that people can play it. I also learned about how narrative games are made, how different storytelling things are done. So that was, I think, one starting point where I was like, I want to be a game designer.
I see. That is very interesting. That is inspiring, actually. Right. So
Yeah,
for
it
someone,
was
yeah,
yeah, it was I think more of a discovery for me, and
Mhm.
this was not something which I knew from the start. Like a lot of people do, and they play a lot of games, and they're like, you want to be a game designer. But for me, it was a gradual
Gradual
process.
process. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for someone starting in game design, what do you think is the right way to go? How does one need to start?
I think you need to love games. You
Okay.
need to play a lot of games. And I think not only one type of game and not only on one platform, but you also need to explore a lot of different platforms and a
Mhm.
lot of different genres because while designing a game, you can't be focused on one thing. I've seen a lot of people who are just focused on shooters or RPGs, but then you don't get an overview of what actually design comes with. It's also important to know which platform do you want to design it for, what audience do you want to design it for. These days we also have a lot of educational games coming up, so maybe
Right.
you are more inclined towards that part of that type of game design, or else you want to be into a hardcore PC or PlayStation games and you're more interested into that and you want to go there. So you I think first of all you need to decide what you like, if you're enthusiastic about designing and if you really want to go into it. And it's not only playing games. I've got a lot of questions where people say it's good to be a game designer because you play a lot of games. But that's true partially, but that's also there's also a lot of critical thinking involved. So when you look at a game, you don't just look at a game to play it. You also check, why is this thing being implemented and why is this thing placed here. So you have UX, you have UI, you have the whole design part, you also have the whole interactiveness into it. So there are a lot of things which you need to consider.
Right. So, what resources would you actually recommend for a beginner to actually get started with game design? And what are the components? Like there is design and then there is the programming part. And which part is more important, and how do you start it exactly in that manner?
All of them are important because
Yeah.
to make a game, there's a huge team involved. So there's a designer, there's a developer, there's an artist, there's a marketing team. And depending upon the size of the company or depending upon who all are building this game, it varies person to person. So it's not necessary for you to learn programming if you want to be a designer, because designing in itself is a complete different part. There's a lot more involved into it, where you come with defining the gameplay, the mechanics, the meta of the game, or even the basic ideation, or even deciding what kind of look do you want for your game. But then when you decide all these things, there's an artist who will pick it up and who will make the game look super nice, and they'll have their own ideas and they'll implement it into the game. And the developer is also somebody who's also responsible of a more technical part of the game design, technical part of building a game, wherein when you have an idea and you explain it to a developer, this developer changes it into something which you can actually play. So these are all different parts of making a game. And if I talk about the resources, I think there are a lot of courses available online. There are a lot of universities available in India, outside India. Then there are a lot of articles and websites like GDC videos are super nice, game development conference, and you have like really amazing designers, developers, artists speaking about their work and how was their journey all throughout. And then there's extra credits, which explains different small parts of game design. So how do you do balancing, or different mechanics involved in different genres of the game. Then you also have a lot of books. One of my favorite book is The Art of Game Design by Jesse Shell. And he actually looks at games from very different perspectives. So he has taken out what other people have said, what other people have experienced, and then he has collaborated everything into the book, and he's explaining game design in a very different aspect.
Ooh,
And
okay.
there's another book called as Fundamentals of Game Design, and then a lot of other articles and stuff.
Cool, cool, cool,
There's
cool.
a lot.
Yeah. So, how does the process of design actually go? Like when you think about games, there is obviously maps, there is characters, there is these bunch of things. So, how does designer actually think about everything? Like how do you go from step one to till the end and think about everything creatively?
So the step one, the main and the best process of being a game designer is the ideation part, where you come up with random hundreds of ideas and you keep iterating on those things. So you have this ideation session wherein you can just come up with some idea, think about it thoroughly, you sketch it out, you draw it out, howsoever you feel you want to express it. Then you also do a little brainstorm about it. So we also see what trends are going on currently, what kind of games are people more inclined to. So there might be some hyper casual games which are like you can play them like for seconds and then this game is done. You play one session is for like 30 seconds or 1 minute. But there are also games like FIFA or like COD, where in one session generally lasts for like 30 minutes or hours or something, because the players are more engrossed into it. So your user base is different. So first of all, you need to understand what kind of audience you're catering to,
Yeah.
what kind of genre do you want to build the games in, what platform do you want to build it upon. And then you start with taking all those elements, you brainstorm, you create a map around it, and then you come up with an idea. And once you have an idea, then you start creating a prototype. So this prototype also involves a designer who has the whole idea and has also already thought through what the game is going to be. Then there's a developer who's going to implement it. And then there's an artist who's going to make the prototype look good. It doesn't have to be very polished, but it just needs to convey what the gameplay is going to be about. So then once the prototype is done, then we show this prototype to a certain amount of users to see how the game is playing out. There's not much involved into the game. There's nothing, you don't have like several screens, you don't have cards or characters or meta or anything into it. It's just the basic gameplay. And if the users like it, if they already understand what it's going to be, then you go forward with that. And then with that, you have the smart prototype, and then you start building upon features onto it. Then you also decide, you correct the physics of the game. You see what controls do we want. You see where do we want to place these controls exactly? Is it going to be user friendly? Do we want to place it on the right side or left side? Or then you bring in characters. So you decide what kind of characters do you want, should they look like, and then you have the whole monetization process involved in this. Your games need to make money. So then you decide, either do you want to go with ad monetization, or do you want to go with in-app purchases. So if your game is a casual and it's played by a mass majority of users, you would probably want to go with ad monetization, which is you show people ads, or you give them rewards by making them watch ads.
Yeah.
But you also have to have in-app purchases, which is where they pay in some amount and then they get some in-game currency. So all these things, they need to be balanced. You can't give them a lot of currency. You can't give them less currency, because the players might not play the game for a long duration of time.
Right.
So that needs to be balanced completely.
Mm-hmm.
Then comes in the meta part. So how do you make sure that your games are being played for a very long time? Especially for a mobile game, you want your players to come back to the game constantly. You don't want them to play it for one session and then uninstall it. So then there needs to be a feature or an element fitted into the game to make sure that the player comes back to the game every single day. So then all these things have to be balanced. Then once I think the game is launched, then you go into the live off process, wherein you keep having some events, you keep introducing new things so that the player doesn't get bored, and they always have something new to come to.
Yeah.
And then finally, you'll be done with your game. You still won't be done with your game, but you just keep iterating and including more things.
Yeah. So personally for you, which actually takes more process? Does the programming part take you more time, or does the design part take you more time?
It goes hand in hand, because I'm the one who's actually designing, and then I have a team of developers with me. So then I make sure that my features are ready before they start with the process, and then I hand in my sheets to them and I explain it to them what the feature is going to be, and then they develop it. And by the time they're done developing that particular feature, then I come up with a new thing, and then I give them the second part. So the design has to be done first, and then programming goes into it. So both of them, I think, equally they take a lot amount of time.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think is the biggest problem when it comes to designing a game that you have faced so far?
Uh, uh, Quite a lot. So the ideation process, it's good, but sometimes it can be frustrating, because you might come up with like 10 or 20 ideas and none of them, they go ahead. Or maybe you start developing the game. So your idea is good, you create a prototype, you start do a soft launch of the product in few countries. So you've already invested like 6 months or 1 year on that game. But then when you actually launch it in the game market, you see that it's not going well, and then you have to kill it. So that's, I think, the worst part, because you've already worked on that game for like a year, but then it's just not doing well. It's not making money. So you have to kill it. So it's said that when you're working on a project, treat it like your baby, but then don't hold on to it. It's okay if it's not going to work, and you have to start fresh completely. And then along with it, the whole balancing part is very important, but that's something which you get with experience, and you know that this is going to work or not. So that's fine. That's the fun part of the job.
So, what's the biggest game that you have ever been a part of? The game that has made probably the most money or has had the most users, which is the biggest game you've been part of? And what do you think
Uh,
actually were the factors of success for that game?
I think one of the games that I worked on a few years back or 2 years back or something, it's called Heroes Battle. It's on Play Store. So I work only on mobile games. So it's on Play Store and App Store. And yeah, yeah. And it's an auto battler game, which we were a bit inspired from the Dota auto battler game, which came up during that time. But we wanted this game to be for the casual audience. So the most fun part was the characters that we created for this game were inspired or like spoofs of superheroes and medieval or modern heroes or even Game of Thrones characters or something like that. So this game is basically wherein it's a turn-based idle RPG kind of a thing, wherein you have a lot of characters ranging from archers, swordsmen, guys with big health, or you have shooters and stuff. And then, there's strategy involved, wherein based on what kind of character you have, you place it on the field. So if it's an archer, you place it behind. If it's a big guy, you place it in the front, or you have even cavalries or something like that. And then your game starts, and then they auto battle itself. And it's also a bit roguelike, so that when you start with level 1, you keep progressing to higher levels if you keep winning. But the moment you lose, you're back to level 1 and you play it again. But every time, the thing is, you get more characters, you get more cards, you upgrade them, and then your characters become better. So it's like a loop which
Yeah.
goes on. And that was super fun working upon it.
Mm-hmm. So, what do you think are the factors that made this successful, though?
Yeah, I think I think the genre in itself, because there are not a lot of games which are existing currently in the market based on this fact. So you have idle battles and you have separate idle games, but an auto battler is something which is not very common. And this was something new introduced to the market. So that is why I think a lot of people liked it. Plus, also, we made sure that the characters that we implement in the game are not very serious. So it can be catered to a mass audience. So that's why we made them more relatable. So this was not done at one go. We released the game, we had a lot of iterations, we got a lot of feedback, and it kept on going, and we kept on iterating on the fact. So I think also based on our players' feedback, it made us improve the game a lot, and it finally turned on to what it is currently.
I see. So, what inspires your creativity as a creator? And like, how do you stay motivated? How do you get up every day and say, okay, I'm going to crush this day? What makes you feel, like this, feel motivated?
This because this is my passion. It's uh, I don't feel bad about being a work day, or I don't feel sad about going to work every day. I love doing it. I love playing games. I love playing games even if there are genres which I don't like, but I have to play it for research work, but I just love doing it. I have been also what's important, even as being a game designer, is like I keep ideating. So like when you're engrossed in a game and you're working for it for years, it's possible that you lose that creativity wherein you come up with new games and stuff. But I make sure that I do it myself. I still have a diary every day in my hand. I keep writing stuff. I keep sketching stuff so that I don't lose this part. And I think this was something which was in me from the start, because my mom made sure that in school times, I joined all those creative classes and art and drawing and something. So I was always into this.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not doing something which I'm forced to do, and I will still choose to do it. There was a point where I think there wasn't much money in game design in India, especially. So a lot of people turned into UI UX because that gives you money. But for me, I think just the sheer passion of doing game design and being a game designer pulls me through every day,
I
which
see.
is my.
So, what is your future? What does the future hold for you? What are your future plans? And what does the future hold for games? What do you
Mhm.
think will be the next big thing?
I think the game design is developing a lot. This was something which started, I think, in 60s or 70s, where we had like all those arcade games, and then we started off with consoles and mobile and PCs, and then all of these type things started later on. But now I think something which is developing a lot is AR, VR. We have cloud gaming these days. We have previously we did not even have educational games like this, but now you buy a tab, you make some physical things in front of you, and because of AR you can actually see it happening or reacting or giving you feedback on your tabs or screens. So they are combining physical aspects along with the digital part, which is actually really good for kids, because you don't want the kid to be engrossed on a screen for a very long time. So all these with VR, you get all this immersive experience, and you feel like you're actually in that system and you're in that environment and you're playing a game. And it's not only limited to game. There are so many interior designers or architects, they're using VR so that you can actually feel being inside that place at that moment, and you can experience it in a very better way. So I think this is definitely going to boom a lot. We have cloud gamings wherein your servers are doing everything and you don't need to store things into your device because your storage is less. But though all these things are coming up, I think mobile, PC, console, these things are going to stay forever. They won't go anywhere.
Yep, I totally
And
agree.
in terms of, yes, and in terms of what I see for myself, uh, I just want to grow more in this field. There's so much that I need to learn. There's so much that I need to experience. And that's what I just want to do. I just want to learn, grow, and be more experienced and have a game which people know of. And if I talk to people and I say this is something which I made and they know of it, that's the biggest achievement.
Yes, indeed. All right. Thank you, Anushree, for joining us. You gave some proper amount of value in this episode, and I'm sure that the viewers enjoyed it. Yeah, and yeah, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me.
All right. Bye bye.